We have all met Mark Twain in one way or another. Most of us know the man through his works that have an honored place in American literature. Some of us have seen that rare silent motion picture of this inspired humorist whose words have delighted people the world over. But suppose we could hear him speak. Suppose on a pleasant afternoon we should visit the house in Hartford, Connecticut, where Mark Twain once lived. And suppose in the billiard room where he wrote and played, we should find him relaxing at his favorite pastime. Mr. Twain, do you mind if we disturb you a moment? There are some young friends of yours who would like to meet you.
Well,
thank you, sir. I think some of these young people would like to ask a question or two. They've never met a great author before.
oh, I'm always sorry to have my name mentioned as one of the great authors, because they have such a sad habit of dying off. Chaucer is dead, so is Milton, and so is Shakespeare. And I'm not feeling very well myself.
Beautiful shot, Mr. Twain.
Great game, best game on earth.
Does it give you much exercise?
Oh, I never take any exercise, except sleeping and resting. I could never see any benefit in being tired. Come on.
Does someone want to ask Mr. Twain a question?
How old are you, Mr. Twain?
19. In June.
I believe they would like you to tell them a few things about your life.
Well, my memory is not as good as it used to be. When I was younger, I could remember anything, whether it happened or not. But I'm getting old now. Soon I shall remember only the latter. I'll forget the Lord's middle name someday, right in the midst of a storm, when I need all the help I can get.
Mr. Twain, I read that you grew up in Hannibal, Missouri. Were you born there?
I was born on the 30th of November, 1835, in the almost invisible village of Florida, Missouri. Missouri was an unknown new state then, and needed attractions.
When you were a boy, did you get into trouble like Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn?
Why, when I was a boy, I was a good boy. I was a very good boy. Why, I was the best boy in my school. But I don't know why I never heard anyone say that but myself. I always recognized it. Well, I remember the first time I ever stole a watermelon. Stole? Oh, no, I don't mean that. No, it was the first time I ever withdrew a watermelon. Retired it from circulation. No, it was the first time I ever extracted a watermelon. There's exactly the word I want. I extracted that watermelon from a farmer's wagon while he was inside negotiating with another customer. I carried that watermelon to the lumber yard, and there I broke it open. It was a green watermelon. You know, when I saw that, I began to feel sorry. It seemed to me that I had done wrong. I reflected deeply. And then I knew there was only one thing that was going to make me feel right again, inside. And that was restitution. So I gathered up the biggest fragments and I carried them back to the farmer's wagon and I restored the watermelon. And I told him he ought to be ashamed of himself going around working off his worthless green watermelons on trusting purchasers who had to rely on him. And I made him give me a good one in place of it, too. And I told him if he didn't reform, I'd see to it he got no more of my trade. Why, that man was as contrite as a revivalist's last convert. He promised he'd never again carry another green watermelon if he starved for it. And he drove off a better man. Now, do you see what I did for that depraved farmer? He was on a downward path, and I rescued him. And all I got out of it was a watermelon.
Mr. Twain, is that story really true?
Why, young lady, I am the wellspring of truth. But you can't bring up the whole well with one bucket. Truth is the most valuable thing we have. Let us economize it. You want to discount me 90% for embroidery, but what is left is perfect and priceless truth without a flaw in it anywhere.
Mr. Twain, do you think Huckleberry Finn is a classic?
A classic is a book which people praise but don't read.
I read it. Mr. Twain, did you and the other boys in Hannibal really want to be steamboat men?
Oh, yes. Boy after boy managed to get on the river. By and by, I ran away, too. I said I would never come home again till I was a pilot and could come in glory. I loved that profession far better than any I've followed since. And I took a measureless pride in it. I hoped to follow the river the rest of my days and die at the wheel when my mission was ended. But by and by the war came and commerce was suspended. My occupation was gone. So I had to seek another livelihood. I became a silver miner in Nevada, a newspaper reporter, a gold miner in California, a special correspondent to the Sandwich Islands, a roving correspondent in Europe and the East, an instructional torchbearer on the lecture platform, and finally I became a scribbler of books and an immovable fixture amongst the other rocks of New England.
Mr. Twain, how old were you when you started smoking cigars?
Why, I don't remember when I first began to smoke. I came into this world asking for a light. And I expect to go out of it blowing smoke rings. I make it a rule never to smoke more than one cigar at a time. Not that I care for moderation myself. I do it as an example to others. And to pulverize those critics who say that I am a slave to my habits. I can give it up whenever I want to. I've done it 1,000 times. I've always bought cheap cigars, reasonably cheap, that is. 60 years ago, they cost me $4 a barrel. But my taste has improved lately, and I pay $7 now. 6 or 7. 7, I think it is. Yes, it's 7. But that includes the barrel.
Surely, Mr. Twain, you don't advise smoking for children.
Well, my habits protect my life, but they'd probably assassinate you.
You said you were a roving correspondent in Europe and the East. Did you use some of the letters that you sent back to your newspaper when you wrote Innocents Abroad?
Why, yes, I used several of them, 10 or 12, perhaps. I wrote the rest of the Innocents Abroad in 60 days. I was very young in those days. exceedingly young, marvelously young, younger than I am now, younger than I shall ever be again, by hundreds of years.
Do you mean you don't think too much of Innocents Abroad?
Well, when the Lord finished the world, he pronounced it good. That's what I said about my first work, too. But time, I tell you, time takes the confidence out of these incautious early opinions. It's more than likely that he thinks about the world now pretty much as I think about the Innocents Abroad. The fact is, there's a trifle too much water in both.
How did you enjoy your trip through Europe and the East?
Oh, wherever we went, in Europe, Asia, in Africa, we made a sensation. We always took care to make it understood that we were Americans. Americans. Why, we found that a good many of those foreigners had never even heard of America. In Paris, they simply opened their eyes and stared at us when we spoke to them in French. We never did succeed in making those idiots understand their own language.
We're going to have to leave soon, Mr. Twain. Is there any advice you'd care to give these young people that you would suggest they follow?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have some things in my mind which I've often longed to say for the instruction of the young. Now, my dear young friends, always obey your parents when they are present. Now, this is the best policy in the long run, because if you don't, they will make you. You see, most parents think they know better than you do. And you can generally make more by humoring that superstition than you can by acting on your own better judgment.
Thank you, Mr. Twain. We enjoyed our visit with you very much. I hope you'll let us come again sometime.
Well, I'm approaching the threshold of age. I came in 1835 with Halley's Comet. It's coming again pretty soon, and I expect to go out with it. It'll be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has said, no doubt, now here these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together. Oh, I'm looking forward to that.